Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randle and Gus Kearns.
Welcome back to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we continue on the train around the country, previewing each and every one of the 357 college basketball teams. I am your host, Mike Randle. Please follow me on Twitter at RandleRand. Today we have someone who is a returning guest, a great guest, in fact, David Jablonski, who is a beat writer for the Dayton Daily News. He has covered Dayton basketball for us in the past, and of course Dayton, one of the powerhouse mid-majors in the country. We had to have him on here to preview the 2021-2022 season. Please follow him on Twitter at David P. Jablonski. David, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing today?
Good. Glad to be here and glad to talk some college basketball.
You know, so we're going to talk about Dayton, and last year, the question is the same for everyone. How did COVID affect the program? Were there any closures? And given what they went through, which was uncertainty, how did things progress during the regular season for the Flyers?
They were luckier than some teams in not having any big shutdowns. They had a couple postponements, cancellations because of other teams' COVID issues, but Dayton, as far as I know, didn't have any, at least among their players, any COVID issues. So that was good, but the whole season was kind of a mess. I guess everybody was going through some of the same things, so can't use it as too much of an excuse. But for Dayton, especially coming off the historic 29-2 season of 2019-20, losing Obi Toppin, one of the great players in school history, to the NBA, National Player of the Year. Anthony Grant was National Coach of the Year. I mean, anything was bound to be a letdown after that season. So they went through some difficulties, I think, because of that. They did return plenty of key players that, probably should have had a better season, but they finished 14-10. Had a pretty good non-conference season, even though it was only 5 games, 4-1, but just had some inexcusable losses in conference play. Fordham, LaSalle, teams they never lose to, especially at home. The LaSalle loss was at home. Fordham, they never lose to, home or away, and they lost at Fordham. That kind of tainted the season from the very start of conference play. So there were a lot of difficulties. Some injuries certainly contributed to that, and, it was just a weird season for everybody.
Yeah, it was. We're in New Jersey, so I got to see them on a few occasions. Once they got through the non-conference there, I wasn't sure how the season was going to go, but they started off, they had the loss at home to SMU, but SMU, of course, is a tough team. Then they had the double overtime neutral court win against Mississippi State. That was impressive. Followed that up with a great game against a hot Mississippi team with Kermit Davis's crew that came in. And then, like you said, just some inexplicable things. I saw the Fordham game. That was a very odd one, of course, like you said, 55-54. But then they righted the ship. They beat Davidson in overtime, beat Duquesne, George Washington. The VCU game, listen, VCU was very, very strong, but that was rough. And then really at the end of the year, like you said, they get into the A-10 conference tournament. They finished 9-7, beat Rhode Island early, and then a tough loss to VCU. And they had the matchup with VCU that I thought they could really battle, but it just didn't work out. And then, of course, Memphis and NIT. So was it the injuries, or was it just sort of the frenetic way the season went?
Well, the one player they didn't have in conference play that they had in the 5 non-conference games was Chase Johnson, the Florida transfer who, in 4 seasons, was never able to finish the season because of various issues, had concussion problems. And he left the program in the 2019-20 season in December, after playing a significant role in the first 8 games or so. And, he was a starter again this year and, helped them to some wins in non-conference play. And then he left the program again, for the same issues. He just had, some health issues, and had to take care of them back home in West Virginia. So I don't know how they would have done with him the whole season, but it certainly was a clear dividing line in the season, because that LaSalle game, it was a 7-man crew for that game at home, the first A-10 game, and it was just not the same team. And they had some guys freshmen contributing who hadn't really played at all up to that point. So that was kind of that loss could be explained because of that. But the Fordham game, you got to win that no matter who you got on your roster if you're Dayton. So, there were some other injuries. Rodney Chapman was out for a while. I'm sure that cost them a win or two here or there. But they had some good performances, in between there. They just couldn't get anything consistent. Beat Davidson. I can't remember who else they beat. I have to look at the schedule. It was such a strange season, as I already said.
They beat St. Louis twice too. They had two.
Beat St. Louis twice. There you go. That's what I'm thinking of. That was a big win, and they beat them pretty handily.
Yep.
At home. So that was a good win. But losing twice to VCU in the regular season and then again in the A10 tournament was not good. They beat Richmond too.
Yep. And end of the year with St. Bonnie's, the big one away at St. Bonnie's.
St. Bonaventure on the road, the A10 regular season and conference tournament champs. And, Dayton went into the A10 tournament with a chance to play at home if they had made the championship game. That was a pretty big carrot on the stick, so to speak, but they couldn't get past VCU at VCU's place. So, it was, no matter what, it was going to be a disappointing season with all that was going on, but it was a little bit more disappointing and certainly not enjoyable for many people.
So we turn the page to this year. Anthony Grant, of course, really successful, entering his 5th season at Dayton. Like you said, 2019, he was 21-12. Then the 29-2 year, just a spectacular performance. Last year, 14-10. But let's turn the page. Talk about, David, the players that are not coming back this year, either through graduation or if they had any transfers as well, out.
Well, at the top of the list is Jalen Crutcher, 4-year starter, one of the great players in school history, top 20 in scoring, top 5 and I forget where he finished, maybe 3rd, top 5 in assists. 2-time A10 first team performer. He's going to try to get into the NBA. I don't know, probably maybe spend time in the G League if he gets a contract. I haven't heard anything about training camp invites. He played in the summer league, but he's going to be a hard one to replace. Rodney Chapman elected to continue in college for a 5th or 6th season on the court. He started his career at Chattanooga, played 2 seasons for the Flyers and started, but he's going to Vanderbilt this season to play for Jerry Stackhouse. He's a loss too, but nobody expected him to be back, or Crutcher. I mean, he was ready for the next level, whether it's here or in Europe. And Andy Watson is a big loss. Consistent scorer. One of the top 3-point shooters the last 2 seasons. Next year's team is going to have to find some 3-point shooters. He's a loss, but again, not somebody they expected back. Jordy Chimanga, big guy, a role player 2 years ago and a starter this year. Wasn't a huge contributor, just had a lot of foul trouble, but certainly was improved this past season. And those are the big losses. They lost a freshman, Luke Frazier, who entered the transfer portal, and still I don't think he signed with anybody new, as far as I know, last I checked. So, that's who they lost. Missed one guy, Dwayne Cohill, transferred to Youngstown State. He could have been a really good player. He was a key player for their 29-2 season and missed last season with an injury, and it was kind of surprising that he left. But, got his reasons, and I think Dayton will be okay without him, although it was disappointing that he left.
Yeah, Crutcher was the real key.
Yeah, Crutcher is the big one.
And they went through so much this year with, like you said, there were COVID and injuries. But as long as they had Crutcher on the floor, a guy who plays defense like he does, makes big shots for this team, did so 2 years ago as well, that you can't take that away. That's why no one wants to play Dayton, even when they were down a little bit. And it looks like, David, with what they have coming in this year, they are not down at all. Their recruiting class per 24/7 Sports is number 1 in the A10, and it is top 20 nationally. You have let's start with the transfers. 2 transfers coming in here. You have Kobe Ellis and Toumani Camara, who I think should be able to contribute right away.
The transfers. Camara, he's their biggest one in a couple of years. I mean, the 29-2 team had Ibi Watson and Rodney Chapman and Jordy Chimanga, a bunch of transfers. Chase Johnson too, although he didn't pan out. So this is a program that's lived on transfers. They had like 7 years in a row where the leading scorer was a transfer every year, going back to, Jordan Seibert, the leading scorer for the Elite 8 team in 2014. So transfers of, Dayton has lost players to the transfer portal, but they've gained a lot more. And Camaro could be the next big one. I mean, put up big numbers in the SEC, so we'll see what he can do in the A10. We got to talk to him at a media thing in the middle of the summer, and he looks like an impressive guy, and he'll get a chance. He could be a real leader for this team because they need experience.
David, last year at Georgia, 13 points, almost 8 rebounds. He had 2 assists, a block, and a steal. And as the season went on, he really shined at the end. His last 4 games, he had 2 double-doubles. He had 22 and 10 again, a win over LSU for Georgia. So this is a guy I think can come in, and he could be very, very strong in the A10 right away.
Yeah, Dayton recruited him when he was in high school. He was in there. Dayton was in his final 3. Coaches I talked to said maybe he should have gone to Dayton to begin with, but he played against Dayton in the Maui Invitational 2 years ago, and Obi Toppin was kidding them about not picking Dayton. but can't really go wrong with picking Georgia in the SEC. He's going to get a fresh start here and a chance to really put up all conference numbers if he has that kind of ability. And joining him as far as transfers is Kobe Elvis, guard from DePaul. Didn't put up big numbers as a freshman, but again, DePaul was a team that didn't even start till late December, was in quarantine.
Yeah, they were struggled. Yep,
a lot of the season. So it's really hard to judge him as freshman season. He certainly, had some big numbers in high school. He's from Canada, Ontario, and I'm kind of an unknown guy is Richard. I will probably pronounce his last name wrong, but he's from East Tennessee State. I won't even try it. He's from England. He's Dayton's first player from London. Fuel or something like that. I know how to spell it, but
yeah, that's often better than saying it. Yes,
as a writer, I'm not the best at pronouncing it. It takes me a while for that. Although we've had some tough ones in recent years, going back to Costas. Adetikumbo, did I say that right?
Yes, very good. Yes.
They got 3 transfers. Richard is, kind of an unknown because he didn't play much at all for East Tennessee State last year, but he was coming off a big injury. Those 3 are going to be certainly in the mix for playing time because, they do have college experience. The freshman class that you mentioned, best freshman class ranking-wise in Dayton history. At least as far as,
it doesn't surprise me. This class is loaded. And what impressed me, David, is where these players are from. This is not just one area. You have Deron Holmes, who's a 4-star power forward, 6'8", 200 pounds from Florida. You have Caleb Washington, 3-star from Georgia. He was top 10 in his state. Malachi Smith, who's a point guard, 6 feet, 160. He's from the Bronx, New York. And Lynn Greer from Pennsylvania. He's a 3-star as well. So talk about it. It's you said the best recruiting class in Dayton history, and they're from across the country.
Right. It started with Malachi Smith, younger brother of Scoochie Smith.
Yep.
Famous name in Dayton history. From New York City, where Dayton has recruited a lot in recent years because assistant coach Ricardo Greer is, he's from New York, knows everybody there. He's done a great job, starting with Obi Toppin.
Sure.
That was a pretty big pickup from New York City. I mean, it's not like Dayton has not recruited there in the past. I mean, their all-time leading scorer, Roosevelt Chapman, is from Brooklyn, so they've got a deep history in New York City, but it seems like they've been there more in recent years with offers and recruits. Kobe Brea, who's entering his sophomore season, also from the Bronx, just like Malachi. So, Malachi could be a special player. He's certainly going to be competing for playing time, and he looked pretty good in the practice I saw. But, I mentioned Dayron Holmes. He was the second guy in the class to commit after Malachi last September or October, somewhere in that range. Dayron, the top-ranked recruit in Dayton history. So that's a pretty big pickup. You just see a top 40 guy and you just assume Dayton won't get him because, they've offered him over the years, but haven't really got him unless they're through the transfer portal. But, he liked what he saw in Dayton, and he could be a good one. I saw him play in the Dayton area with his team from Arizona in the winter, and he lived up to the billing there, playing in front of a few Flyer fans. Caleb Washington committed to Dayton 2 days after Dayron. That was a pretty good weekend for Anthony Grant and his staff. And then Lynn Greer was sometime in January and February, but he's a familiar name to Dayton fans because his dad played for Temple, who played at UD Arena a number of times throughout his college career and killed the Flyers a number of times. So, yeah, it's a very exciting class.
It's a great class, and Dayton has a great home court advantage. I would think, David, that you have the fans coming back. Knock on wood, we started to get out of this pandemic, a little more regularity here. I would think that would help. And, Dayton always is a team that's looking for the NCAA tournament. They will do well in the A-10. But talk about the non-conference. Had a good non-conference last year. Large school teams do not want to play Dayton. Who do they have on top? I know the whole schedule may not be released yet, but who do they have so far in the non-conference coming up this year?
The non-conference schedule is out. The key, as always, for Dayton is the November tournament. Starts on Thanksgiving. They're playing in what's called the ESPN Events Invitational in Orlando. Used to be Advocare Invitational, Old Spice Classic. The event at Disney World, and they start with the Miami Hurricanes, which will be a good test for this really young team. Miami's certainly not unbeatable. It's probably a good matchup. But the second round would be Kansas, most likely, if Dayton wins. And always hinges on that first game. Got to win that first game to play the best competition. Last year was the first year they didn't get to play in one of these tournaments. They were supposed to play in Myrtle Beach. That event got moved to Orlando, got changed around, and Dayton was going to play in South Dakota. They canceled on that because of COVID, and then ended up with nothing. But this is a more typical November tournament for Dayton. Some good teams, but it's going to depend on whether they win that first game, and that'll determine whether they get to play the quality opponents they hope to. But other than that, you got some pretty good. There's some really good teams and some really not good teams on this conference schedule. So, they play SMU again, this time on the road. That'll be a decent game. Virginia Tech at home is by far, there's not even a game close to it, their best non-conference home game on December 12th. And then they got another tough road game at Ole Miss on December 18th. Ole Miss played at UD last year. Those are the big games. The rest, these are just games filling the schedule. I mean, it starts with Illinois Chicago, then they play UMass Lowell, Lipscomb, Austin Peay. Those are the four out of the gate at home. All games they, should have no business losing, but will be good, at least practice games for a young team. And then they close with, Southern. They also got Northern Illinois and Alabama State at home. So a lot of sub 200 net teams on the schedule, but some top 100 teams on there too. So they should go 11-2 or 10-3 with no issues. But they're going to have to take advantages of the opportunities they have as far as the quality games.
Well, I have to ask you, David, one more question, then we'll get you out of here. Always great to have you on the podcast. What is the vibe around the Dayton fan base? What's the expectation? They lost a lot, great player like Crutcher, things like that, coming out of COVID, but they are always among the top in the A10. They have some transfers coming in. They have the best recruiting class in Dayton history. What would you view, and what do you think most Dayton fans would view as a success this year for Anthony Grant coming into year 5?
Well, I picked them 5th in the A10. I mean, St. Bonaventure is the easy favor. I mean, they return everybody. VCU will be up there. But Dayton has so many unknowns. The returning guys, I mean, some of them did really good things. Zimi Nwokje scored 29 points in a road game at Rhode Island last year. I mean, when he can do that, you never know what he's going to, maybe he could do it more often this season. Maybe not 29 points, but 20 plus points sometimes here and there. Some of the other guys did okay here and there, but they didn't have huge roles. RJ Blakeney, Kobe Brea, who I mentioned, played big roles here and there, but they were freshmen and on a team with 4 seniors in the starting lineup. So, a key name to remember is Mustafa Amsil, who joined the team like late December, scored 22 points in his first game against LaSalle, was an automatic starter after about 2 days of practice, and he could be a really good player this year. He had his ups and downs. As for the fans, realistically, they expect the NCAA tournament and A10 contention every year. I just don't know with this young team. I think 2 years from now they could be really good. This year, history says it's hard to be so young, especially when you're going to have so many veteran teams, teams like Richmond returning 6-year guys. Could be hard to compete against them, but I think people are excited about the young players, excited about the recruiting class, excited to get back in the arena. I mean, the plan is to have a full arena. Hopefully nothing changes between now and November 9th. That certainly hurt Dayton last year, not having a full arena. And they will benefit from that big time if they can fill the place again, as they always do. So we'll see. It's going to be an exciting year. Could be some ups and downs, but we'll see how they do, how they're looking at the end, and maybe they can make a run in the A10 tournament, something they haven't won since 2003. It would be a storybook if they could get back to the NCAA tournament after having been denied it 2 years ago.
And we are not that far removed from that storybook season, 2019-2020, 29-2. You have a fantastic book out, 29-2, the story of the 2019-2020 Dayton Flyers. Folks, there's a lot of magic in Dayton. They have reloaded. They have a great coach. huge home court advantage. You're going to want to pay attention to the Flyers this year for sure. And the perfect person to come on and talk about it was David Jablonski, folks, on Twitter at David P. Jablonski. He is the beat writer for the Dayton Daily News. Follow him on Twitter, interact with him. David, thank you so much for a few minutes here. We are chugging. Our train will continue now. We don't know where our next stop is, but it continues on as we preview college basketball. We love the sport, and Dayton is one of those teams that is at the epicenter in March, a powerful mid-major that can beat the big teams, also play well at home, and we're hoping to have some great basketball from the Flyers this year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cozy in the candlelight.